Hello, everyone. Now, I know that it's hard to keep up on top of what's going on in the Holy Land, but if you want to know more about what's happening here in Israel, I'm Aaron Porras, and this is the Weekly Review.
A very happy Hanukkah to all of our viewers celebrating the Jewish Festival of Lights. The 8-day holiday begins tonight at sundown. Of course, like all the holidays we've celebrated in 2020, this year it will look quite different. Israel's Prime Minister saying that it's just a matter of time, though, until vaccinations start rolling out and things could go back to normal. Nittany Manson with the latest.
Israel received 1 million Pfizer COVID vaccine doses on Thursday, officials say, after an initial delivery of tens of thousands on Wednesday.
ערב חנוכה אנחנו הבאנו אור גדול למדינת ישראל. החיסונים הראשונים של חברת פייזר הגיעו היום לארץ, ומחר יגיע משלוח נוסף גדול בהרבה.
The Prime Minister announcing Israel will speed up the distribution process and begin injections as soon as December 27th. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Health plans to hand out special vaccine IDs.
אני ביקשתי, ושר הבריאות כבר מבצע את זה, לפתח תוכנית, לא תוכנית רמזור, אלא תוכנית דרכון ירוק, שבאמצעותו כל מי שקיבל חיסון יוכל להראות תעודה או אפליקציה שמאפשרת לו להיכנס לאירועים, לקניונים, למתקנים ולכל מיני שירותים. הדבר הזה גם יעודד חיסונים וגם יעזור להחזיר אותנו במהירות לנורמליות.
The health minister is vowing to give 60,000 shots a day.
אז אני מודיע הערב שהחיסונים הראשונים ינתנו ב-27 לדצמבר. זה בסך הכל עוד 18 יום, עוד שבועיים וחצי.
Netanyahu even says he would volunteer to go first.
וכדי לעשות זאת, ביקשתי להוות דוגמה ולהיות האדם הראשון שמתחסן בישראל. מחר אני אפגש יחד עם שר הבריאות, עם ראשי קופות החולים, כדי להיערך למבצע הלאומי האדיר של מתן חיסונים למיליוני אזרחי ישראל.
Israel now again stands on the verge of 2,000 new daily coronavirus cases. 1,828 diagnoses were recorded on Wednesday, and the health ministry says 73,146 COVID-19 tests were conducted on Wednesday, putting the contagion rate at 2.5%. Still, all malls and markets throughout the country have been given the go-ahead to open. While there will not be a nightly holiday curfew like the government had previously discussed, police will be giving tickets to those who visit friends and relatives.
שאנחנו מתחילים בעוד כמה ימים. זה לא רק מבצע של זריקת עידוד, זה דבר אדיר. אנחנו מביאים את הסוף למגפה, וזה בוודאי סיבה להגיד חג שמח.
Nittany Manson, ILTV.
All right, now, meantime, as thousands of Israelis took sick overnight, thousands of others were protesting in the streets, but not over coronavirus closures or hygiene restrictions. Rather, massive crowds in Jerusalem, including hundreds of ultra-Orthodox Jews, were clashing with police, gathering in protest against a light rail route planned to run through some of their neighborhoods. And the demonstrations started by blocking main roads in the city, knocking over fences surrounding the train's construction areas, and setting work vehicles and nearby dumpsters on fire. At least 6 police officers were reportedly injured, and at least 25 protesters were arrested, including some allegedly armed with knives, sticks, and pepper spray. Moving on, a feeling of déjà vu in the international community as the United Nations General Assembly convened Monday evening to discuss, quote, the risk of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East. But why déjà vu? Well, because, of course, what should a resolution with such a widely scoped title focus on, apart from calling on Israel exclusively to renounce its alleged possession of nuclear weapons and sign the UN's Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty? And in a vote of 153-6 with 25 abstentions, the international community overwhelmingly supports this resolution, co-sponsored by the Palestinian Authority, Egypt, Jordan, Saudi Arabia, Oman, and the UAE. Those voting against it, including Canada, the United States, Israel, the Marshall Islands, Micronesia, and Palau. Meanwhile, in a separate vote, the UNGA also voted 174-2 on a resolution calling for a nuclear-free zone in the Middle East, again with a focus on Israel, and with only Israel and the United States opposing. These resolutions, as part of the nearly 20 anti-Israel texts passed annually in the General Assembly, and at any rate, it's widely assumed that Israel is among the 9 known nuclear powers in the world, but Israel has never confirmed nor denied its nuclear capabilities, and it remains one of the few nations not to have signed the UN's Non-Proliferation Treaty. In other news, while the UNGA swings the axe, support for Israel is coming from unlikely places. Pictures and video of an Israeli flag and a banner reading "Thank you, Mossad," seen hanging on a bridge in Tehran, going viral overnight. Now, those responsible for the sign remain unidentified, but Iranian law bans the use of Israeli flags, symbols, or signs, while often jailing or even executing anti-state protesters. So that makes sense. Still, right there in the Iranian capital, someone or several someones felt brave enough to reach out to the international community, taking care to write the sign in English, and seemingly in reference to the recent alleged Mossad assassination of top Iranian nuclear official Mohsen Fakhrizadeh. Armed with assurances from the airlines and from United Arab Emirates foreign ministry authorities, thousands of Israelis are taking advantage of the new opportunities afforded to them through the Abraham Accords. But a whole flight full of Israelis were received Monday morning with a less than expected welcome when airport officials denied them entry into the country.
מה שאתם רואים פה עכשיו זה ביזיון מוחלט, אנחנו נמצאים פה בשדה התעופה כבר למעלה משעתיים. כמו שאתם רואים, תראה להם פה את כל האנשים, אנחנו נמצאים פה למעלה משעתיים. יש פה ילדים, יש פה תינוקות, יש פה אנשים אחרי לילה בלי שינה. ובעצם, אחרי כל מאות השקלים והדולרים שבעצם השקענו פה, והבטיחו לנו שהכל מסודר, היינו עם פליי דוביי בקשר בשבוע האחרון באופן רציף. בכל זאת, מה שהם עשו זה בעצם סוג של הונאה, כי הם לא מגיעים לפה, אין לנו עם מי לדבר. דרכונים זרים, כמו שאתם רואים, כבר לא נמצאים פה, וכל מי שאתם רואים פה זה רק ישראלים, אז חבל מאוד שזה מה שקורה.
Over 160 Israeli passengers, men, women, and children, on Fly Dubai flight FZ1628 were greeted with an unfortunate surprise upon arrival in Dubai early Monday morning. The Israelis being refused entry into the country and held for hours at the airport while their non-Israeli co-passengers were admitted. Well, Israeli Foreign Ministry officials explained that apparently the delay was due to a misunderstanding in visa application requirements and that all the Israeli visitors would eventually be allowed into the country after electronically filling out the correct forms. Still, at least 2 other flights due to depart Monday morning were delayed, awaiting a solution to the issue. And meanwhile, a Fly Dubai spokesperson apologizing for the incident, stating that they are reviewing the reasons behind the entry delay, that they fully understand that this was inconvenient for passengers, and that this is not the standard of service that they expect of themselves, promising to rectify the issue ahead of subsequent flights. Israel CEO Uri Sirkis likewise saying that problems with Israeli entry visas only began on Sunday and are being worked out. Direct flight agreements between Israel and the UAE have only recently been finalized, and in the few weeks since agreements were signed, these are the first such issues reported. In other news, in spite of mounting issues caused primarily by the pandemic, Israeli alternate Prime Minister Benny Gantz and Finance Minister Israel Katz have again failed to come to an agreement on the national budget, thus bringing Israel one step closer to another round of elections, the 4th round in 2 years' time. Gantz warning again that elections will be a certainty if the Prime Minister's and Finance Minister's Likud party cannot agree in the next few days to pass a 2-year budget for 2020 and 2021, and this as stipulated in their Unity Coalition agreement. Then Gantz adding in a Facebook post that while he doesn't believe elections are right for the country at this time, they are preferable to the paralysis of government. Prime Minister Netanyahu, on the other hand, repeating calls for unity, while Finance Minister Katz criticizes Gantz and his blue and white party for playing politics, arguing instead to pass the 2020 budget now and the 2021 budget early next year. Well, at any rate, assuming the Knesset doesn't vote to dissolve before then, the government has until December 23rd to pass a 2020 budget, or else the coalition will be automatically broken up and elections will be set for March of 2021.
Well, Bahrain is backtracking on recent policy announcements that would have seen it label goods from West Bank settlements as made in Israel. The Gulf Kingdom's trade minister announced it late last week during his historic visit to the country, marking the new strategic cooperation that stemmed from the Abraham Accords. Now, the country's foreign minister saying after a conversation with the Palestinian Authority that the comments had been misinterpreted and that the kingdom will stand by the Arab League in its distinction between the State of Israel and its occupied territories. Well, there may be a new mediator for the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, this time not from the United States, but from Egypt. Abdel Fattah al-Sisi reportedly telling Mahmoud Abbas that he intends to broker peace talks. During a meeting this week in Cairo, the Egyptian and Palestinian prime ministers reportedly agreed that the talks would be overseen by Egypt alongside Jordan, France, and Germany. The The alleged Egyptian peace initiative was not included in official statements from that meeting. The Gethsemane Church, sometimes referred to as the Church of All Nations, is a Catholic church where Christians believe Jesus was betrayed by Judas, one of his followers, and arrested by the Romans before being crucified. Over the weekend, a man was arrested for arson after attempting to set it on fire. More in the next report.
Israeli police arrested a man over the weekend for trying to set fire to an East Jerusalem church by the Garden of Gethsemane.
من قبل تقريبا نص ساعة ودخل وحرق الكنيسة وما انحرق كل شيء نشكر الله لحقنا الحريقة طفيناها.
The site is revered by Christians as the place where Jesus prayed before he was crucified. The 49-year-old Israeli suspect poured flammable liquid inside the Church of All Nations, police said, and then set it alight before the church guard detained him.
متخلف عقليا مش متخلف عقليا المهم العمل هذا عمل إجرامي عمل مش لازم يصير في كنيسة من كنايسنا الموجودة في الأراضي المقدسة.
Images showed a charred bench and a small blackened portion of the mosaic floor of the Catholic Church, which overlooks Jerusalem's old city.
كان ممكن تكون الخسائر كتير كبيرة لهذه الكنيسة. السبب طبعا مش معروف. الشرطة لازم تحقق ولازم تعرف ليش واحد دخل هذه الكنيسة علشان يحرقها.
A spokesperson for the firefighters said 4 teams of firefighters were dispatched to the site, but said the fire had luckily not spread throughout the church. Authorities say the incident is still under investigation. Nittany Manson, ILTV.
Now, elsewhere in the Middle East, the annual GITEX Technology Conference is opening its doors in Dubai, marketing itself as the only global tech show in 2020 that's both live and in person. And perhaps for the first time, Israeli delegations are openly and proudly participating. Nittany Manson with the story.
From the 6th to the 10th of December, over 1,200 exhibitions from over 60 visiting countries are on full display at the Dubai World Trade Center, and excitement levels are through the roof for the 2020 annual GITEC Computer and Electronics Trade Show. But maybe more excited than any are the Israeli delegations seen roaming the conference halls in celebration of the new Abraham Accords normalization.
Actually very exciting. It's been a long time that we in Israel waiting for this peace to come, and we're very happy, and personally I feel very blessed to be here in this amazing country.
Meanwhile, Emirati business owners similarly giddy at the new prospects for future collaboration and trade with Israel. And Israeli foreign ministry officials then likewise outlining their hopes for our two nations' futures.
I think the common challenge for both our economies create new opportunities. And there is so much that can be done, and it incentivizes us to do more in order to collaborate, in order to find solutions together. So this is a time for collaboration.
In related news, the Abraham Normalization and Peace Accords are doing more for Israel and the UAE than just improving trade relations. This as an Emirati royal is now trying to extend the peace through cultural exchanges and sports. Hannah Rifkin with the story.
The Beitar Jerusalem Soccer Club has long been plagued by racist anti-Arab ideologies expressed by a small minority of their fan base, known as La Familia. But the whole club is now set to get a major change of face, as 50% of the club transfers to its new owner, Emirati royal family member of Abu Dhabi, Sheikh Hamad bin Khalifa Al Nahyan. Further, as one of Al Nahyan's first actions as co-owner, the club will now be more open to recruiting Arab players, another move likely to anger the La Familia crowd. But far from alienating fans, Al Nahyan says he hopes this will lead to a peace through mutual understanding, with co-owner Moshe Hogeg agreeing wholeheartedly.
If you look at the age of this group, actually they're all youngsters, So I think between 16 and 22. I think they're misled, and brainwashed, and I think they are on the dark side. I think we should extend our hand to them and show them the light and the right path.
This racism is a result of ignorance. From one side, we want to light and stop this brainwash and show them, not by talking, by example, that Jews and Muslims can do beautiful things together, as I mentioned before. From the other side, we don't have tolerance for violence or for extreme racism. No tolerance for this.
Meanwhile, in meetings opposite Slovenian Prime Minister Janez Janša, Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu hailed the news as a symbol of the new post-Abraham Accords reality.
It tells you how things are changing so rapidly. And I hope that you can facilitate in your role as in the EU presidency to have the EU understand that this is a different world and there are different opportunities, different alliances for the good, for the better.
All right, moving on. Break out the Theremin because this next story is just begging for a spooky sci-fi background. After 30 years at the helm of the Israeli space security program, and after receiving 3 Israeli security awards, retired Israeli general and respected professor Chaim Eshed is now unveiling that yes, there are aliens among us, yes, Israel has made contact with them, and no, humanity is not ready for them. Also, before you start doubting his words, the 87-year-old Eshed was clear in his recent interview with Yediot Ahronot News that he's not talking about immigration, but rather about a galactic federation complete with an underground base on Mars, where there are American and alien representatives apparently present. He also explains that President Trump both knows about them and was on the verge of disclosing their existence, only to be persuaded not to by the Federation, in order to avoid mass hysteria and panic here on Earth. Apparently, humanity just still has a long way to grow before we can understand the gravity of their presence. The final question, however, is what do they want? But perhaps thankfully for us, Eshed says that it's essentially just to research and understand the fabric of the universe.
Israel is a startup nation, and it's no secret that Israeli innovations are some of the most creative from anywhere on the planet. The pandemic has only increased the need for creative solutions to some of our most pressing problems. One company, for example, has created a smart toilet disinfector that has the potential to change the public bathroom hygiene experience. Chana Rifkin has the story.
Toilet disinfectants, the unsung capeless heroes of the sanitary world, now more important than ever with the COVID-19 pandemic throwing public hygiene back into focus. But fear no more. Israeli startup techies of Killer Whale Limited, now in the final stages of developing a self-described revolutionary high-tech product which disinfects and protects from 99.9% of bacteria and viruses. And that means meticulously maintaining a hygienic environment in your toilet, as well as in any other small space, like elevators, hotel rooms, and small offices. In fact, the technology even has a built-in sensor, allowing the machine to automatically disinfect and clean when needed. And best of all, it's made from recycled and environmentally friendly plastics, making it truly a killer whale at saving time and the planet. Still, the final product is yet to hit the market and is currently in the fine-tuning stages. A pilot model is set to be released in the coming months, with the final product set to drop towards the end of 2021. Smart funding provides quality investment opportunities to support leading Israeli startups in the market, and Killer Whale Limited is one of them. So check out smartfunding.co.il for more information and an opportunity to invest in one of Israel's top high-tech innovations, as well as a chance to get in on Killer Whale Limited's killer future. Chana Rifkin, ILTV.
And now in our final story this evening, get ready to taste the future as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu becomes the first known world leader to eat cultured, cruelty-free meat. Chana Rifkin reporting.
האמת שזה באמת יום מרגש.
לא יאומן. איך אומרים? טעים עם חמלה.
טעים עם חמלה.
ונקי. זה משהו מדהים. לא רע בכלל.
And just like that, with one taste, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu became the first world leader known to eat and get hooked on meat grown in a lab. And the premier getting a taste for the future meat industry in this landmark visit to olive farms where the incredible technology is being developed.
באמת יש פה אמירה חדשנית, העתיד כבר כאן. אתה בתור בן אדם שידוע בידע הטכנולוגי, ברצון לקדם את כלכלת מדינת ישראל, אנחנו יכולים לראות פה בדיוק את מה שאנחנו מדברים עליו.
אין כאן שום הבדל. שום הבדל.
יואו, זה פשוט מדהים.
And in fact, the technology really does have the ability to change Israel and soon the world. Olive Farms Associates explaining the potential.
קופסאות עם הרבה מאוד מבחנות, בכל מבחנה יש כמה מיליונים של תאים, ובמבחנה כזאת בעצם שאנחנו רואים כאן.
אנחנו עושים את זה, וזה גם לחסוך המון זיהום, המון סבל, בסופו של דבר להוריד את המחיר, ולייצר תעשייה חדשה לאנושות, ולתת לאנשים את הברירה.
בדיוק.
לפעמים אין ברירה, אבל כשיש לך את הברירה ומייצרים כאן את הברירה, זה דבר מאוד מאוד משמעותי לדעתי. זה דבר שיש לו השלכות באמת ארוכות טווח, ואני פשוט קודם כל גאה בכם שאתם עוסקים בזה, ואני מתכוון לעזור לכם. אני חושב שמדינת ישראל צריכה להיות מובילה במהלך הזה. היום זה יום שני, ממש meatless Monday.
And finally, our last story tonight is literally out of this world. Space IL, the legendary independent group behind Israel's failed attempt to land a spacecraft on the moon last year, is back at it again. The company taking to Twitter on Monday morning to tease their second landing attempt. And the short video simply reading "Ready to get excited again," followed by the date of December 9th, or Wednesday this week. Well, I, for one, am very excited, as are many other Israelis. Of course, we've all already been ready to get excited since the first Bereshit, or Genesis lander, crashed into the moon's Sea of Serenity in April 2019, followed then by Space IL's immediate announcement of work towards the Bereshit 2, though early predictions were that the project would take about 3 years to complete. So this is certainly a welcomed announcement to end a year that has otherwise been filled with some very harsh realities. And that's it for ILTV's Weekly Review. I'm Aaron Porras. See you next week.